who's joined. We're still expecting some more people to join us, but in the meantime, thank you for finding time to be here, and we look forward to an engaging week, and particularly the day today, as we wait for a few more minutes for other people to join. Let's listen to some music for a start. Wiki, please. Hi, Wiki, can you hear me? Hi, am I audible? Anyone?
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you for everyone who's continuing to join. Hi, Wiki. Please give us some sound. We can't hear the music. Hi, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. I see our numbers are growing at a steady pace. Thank you. We're just giving a few more minutes for some people to join. In the meantime, our tech team is giving us some music. Keep us occupied in the meantime. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. I think 15 minutes waiting period. Our time is up. So we'll just want to welcome everyone to this session today. And the whole week really. We have by FOC leadership, John Ayo, so heading a brief introduction on basically FOC people who are committed to, sorry, just a moment, let me. Is Fountains of Christ, a ministry of young people who are committed to, ministry and spreading the gospel as it is. And the ladies' wing of FOC is called far above Rubies. So we are Rubies. I hope ladies who are in here, you esteem yourself as such, as Rubies. So I hope we'll enjoy learning together today and through the whole week. So we have our speaker here with us. She's joined us, but before I bring her up to, to speak and take this up, I'd like to invite each and every one of us to this week-long conference that has been organized by the Rubies department. We'll have a whole week of learning. So I'd like to invite all of us to show up every day of the week from 8 p.m. We'll be handling different topics concerning our health. Tomorrow's session particularly is for the ladies only. We'll be handling reproductive health tomorrow. So kindly block your calendars for the same, and see you even tomorrow and the rest of the week. Before we begin, I'd like us to pray. And so let me see. Janet Makori, hi, how are you? How's your week started? Would you like to pray with us?
Hi, Chair. Marika started okay. I think we can pray. Father out in heaven, we thank you for the blessings of this day. We thank you for your provisions, and we thank you for your guidance thus far. As we're about to begin our meeting, I ask that you be with us and guide the speaker of the day. May what shall be presented be of great value to each and every person who is here, and may our heart be turned to you is our prayer in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Janet. I'd like a few more people to say hi to us. Anyone who'd like to say hi and briefly just introduce themselves, just so we welcome each other and enjoy the warmth of fellowship. Maybe I'll volunteer Manoti. Manoti, please say hi. Hi, Manoti, can you hear me? Well, if Manoti is not around, Triza? Triza, please say hi.
Hi, my name is Teresa.
Hi, Triza, karibu sana. Amaraket?
Oh, hi, my name is Vivian Amaraki. Thank you.
Karibu sana, Vivian. Goodwin? Is Goodwin with us in the meeting? He's not around. Maybe David Onyango. Please say hi to us. Okay, we don't seem
Hi
to
everyone,
have.
I'm David. Glad to be here.
David, thank you. Thank you. And lastly, Bobby. Bobby, are you there? All right. We don't seem to have Bobby on the call. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you, gents, for also joining us for this session. So today we'll be having a conversation on mental health, and we'll just be looking briefly at what entails mental health, how do we work around it, how do we live a sustainable way to keep our mental health in check in our day-to-day experience, and how can we manage or maintain them. I mean, we can't sufficiently, you can't completely eliminate stressors from your life entirely, but the least you can do is learn how to handle it whenever it comes. So I'm looking forward to learning today. I hope we all are. I'll take us briefly through our speaker's bio. Today we are joined by a very, should I say, powerful lady. By the Gathoni is a clinical psychologist. Psychology. She has over 9 years of a professional. Yes, she's very passionate about mental health management, awareness on the same. And I hope you look forward to learning from her as much as I do. Currently, she serves as a clinical psychologist in charge at AAR, and she's the head of digital relations department at the Chiromo Hospital Group, an arm that she founded herself. So we look forward to learning a lot from you, Gathoni. Lessons, one or two things that at least one or two people here can carry on to can use in their day-to-day life going forward. Besides her professional life, some of her hobbies include outdoor activities, board games, traveling, and she's also an aspiring golfer. So we welcome you, Gathoni. At FOC, we have outdoor sessions, Sabbath worship sessions, and even social Sundays when we go out in nature. We invite you to join us one of these fine days. We hope that we can interact some more beyond this Zoom meeting. So I'd like to invite you to just come on and introduce yourself. I hope there's add on to anything that I left out, and maybe just tell us one or two things about yourself that I don't have covered at the moment. Welcome, Gathoni.
Thank you so much, Ligala, for that amazing introduction. What did you leave out? I am both a cat and a dog lover.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, usually we just have one side.
Mm-hmm.
But yes.
I am neither.
Right, sorry. Well, to add on to that, I'm also a wellness therapist. And in case you're wondering what's the significant difference, as a clinical psychologist, my role is to be able to identify if clients have pre-existing mental illnesses, take them through diagnoses, and then liaise with a psychiatrist and do treatment plans. But as a wellness therapist, the focus is on the overall well-being of an individual. And we are also trying to figure out not what is wrong with the person now, but what is it that happened to this person for us to get to where we are, and how can we work together so you don't have to be sick for you to be able to see a wellness therapist. It's just basic. We call them psychosocial stressors. Yeah. You're going through a heartbreak. Is there a loss that you have gone through, whether it's job or a death? Are you stagnating either in school or life? Basically, just trying to answer the question, how can I be a better version of myself? What is it that I can do to grow myself into a me that I love and appreciate, to fill that void? Yeah, so please allow me to share, and I'm really excited to be here today. I took on this because it was a ladies' conference. I'm very passionate about women. And briefly, it's because maybe what you see today and the nice biography that you could have seen is an end result. It didn't start there, right from childhood. So I'm a product of community, let me say that, and self-growth. And there is no perfection. We keep learning, keep working on ourselves, and keep progressing, moving forward. I'm very, very passionate. Yeah, and I know there are men here. I also started a man cave for our hospital. So not forgetting the boy child. So yeah, forgetting the boy child as well. Yeah, so I don't know if I've been enabled to share, not yet. Right, so I hope that, I know I can't see you, but I truly hope that you will answer some questions when I ask. You can write them on the chat, then I can read them out. And then lastly, I really hope I'm audible. I'm praying that the internet does not disappoint. Yeah, so am I audible?
Yes, Gathoni, you're audible, and we are praying with you.
Thank you.
Yes, please take it away.
Right, I'm still disabled, but yeah, so I can't share my screen.
Wiki, can you help with that? Or is it Peru's?
And thank you, Lydia and Mercy and Justin.
I'm trying to see where the
Hear me?
sharing setting is, but okay, let me try.
Justin says an aspiring golfer. That is Lilia. That is Ligala's fault. It's not golfer. It's golfer.
Oh,
Yeah, like golf.
it's golf. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to tweet about this conversation. Very important conversation, where the WHO statistics show at least every 40 seconds there are deaths by suicide happening. Actually, today there was a funeral of somebody I know by a suicide. The statistics also show 1 in 4 people are likely to suffer from a mental health illness in their lifetime. 1 in 4. Imagine, we are 72 of us. So you can imagine how many of us are truly suffering from a mental health illness. And those statistics are even way before the pandemic, and there was this whole total disruption that came with the pandemic as well. So it's important. Please tweet about this conversation as much as you can. So, okay, let me just be starting. So every time I'm trying to do a conversation on mental health generally or mental wellness, one of the things that I like to start with is exactly what this mental health is about. And by now you have come across mental health, here and there. But what really is mental health, and what do we mean by good mental health? What do we mean by poor mental health? All right. So one, the WHO statistics, we use the WHO definition of what mental health is, and it says that it's a state of overall well-being of an individual. If you have a pen and paper, please have a pen and paper for this. There are 4 key things to look at when we are talking about what mental health is. So the number 1 is, we say, the overall well-being of an individual, whereby 1, this individual is able to realize his or her own potential. And I want you to ask yourself, am I at a point where I really feel that I've realized my potential? 2, the individual is able to cope with daily life stresses. 3, the individual is able to be productive and fruitful. So whether you're in school or whether you're at work, at the end of the day, whatever it is that you're doing, do you feel that you are productive and fruitful in what you're doing? And the 4th one that we do ignore, especially in the digital era of today, we say that the individual is also able to make a contribution within the community. Some definitions say a positive contribution in the community. So those are the key factors. Every single individual has mental health. The distinguishing factors, those key things, are the ones that determine, are you, as Cynthia, experiencing good mental health? Are you, as Goodwin, experiencing good or bad mental health? Okay, so if you're at a point where you're able to realize your own potential, you're coping with whatever stresses that are thrown along your way, if you're at a point where you feel fruitful and productive, if you are making a positive contribution in the community, we say that this individual is experiencing good mental health. However, we do go through ups and downs, all of us. So there are points where you'll have maybe self-doubt. You won't feel like the best version of yourself. At that time, you probably feel low or sad or confused. So we say that person is experiencing poor mental health at that point. Or there are stressors. Maybe there are some stressors you can cope with. Probably you failed a paper. But then if you get a heartbreak, I don't know, I hope all of you have ever gotten a heartbreak. If you've not, it's coming. Yeah, I say that very lightly as well. But if you experience probably something that is so heartbreaking, then at that point, you're also experiencing poor mental health. Now, the reason why I said individuals being able to, today, as more different than how things used to be, it's because we are more isolated today. We are living in a digital space where people are more alone than ever. We're also living in a space of me, right? So you'll find that other than maybe your work, there is nothing else that you do. So when you look at biographies of really big people, maybe like Akina Oprah or Akina Obama, or even Akina Wangari Maathai, in our country, you'll find that despite these people being, negotiating the hierarchy of needs and being the best versions of themselves, they still went ahead to figure out what is it that I can do within the community around me. Yeah, so philanthropy comes in. So people are building hospitals, people are building schools, people are building parks. It's to be able to feel that community part of the void. So that's basically what mental health is. And the next time somebody asks you what mental health is, I hope now you'll be able to give them a proper definition. Please give me a moment. Let me share this with Joan. Will I be able to do that? Or should I just continue?
Yes, Gathoni, please share it with Joan so that the meeting host can share the presentation on your behalf.
Yes, let me do that. I hope I'll be able to do that very well. Wow. I'm just realizing that I might have to share it on WhatsApp because I don't have her email. Just allow me to proceed. Sorry about that. I
Okay.
think not able.
John, you can type your email. I just
Yeah,
send it. Yeah.
received it. Sorry about that. These things usually happen.
Excuse me, what's the issue? I help.
They need to make me host
There are
in
three
the
dots.
Zoom.
The one who is hosting, there are three dots there at the bottom. Wycliffe. Can you see them? Wycliffe. Wycliffe is not responding. So it's very easy. The three dots, they just share, or where your name is, Gathoni, he or she right clicks and makes you a co-host or a host. It's just that easy. Or at the bottom it's called an armor, something like an armor. Enable participants to share their screen. Kitu kama, it's called what? An armor for security. He or she can.
Sure.
Is that like a shield?
I'm on it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, shield.
Right. Okay. Wycliffe is back.
Yes, sure. I'm on it. I've just enabled that.
Good job, Wycliffe. Wow. Yes. Yeah, I know I was given 30 minutes, but I can assure you we will not be doing this in 30 minutes. But please bear with me. I'll try to be as fast as I can. Let me just go back a little bit and show you that this is Chiromo Hospital Group. Yeah. So, yeah, let's proceed. So, some of the things that I want you to also note, one of the most frequently asked questions is usually, when do you start seeing signs of mental illnesses? So most mental health conditions usually really go undetected or untreated until you get to late teenagehood and late adulthood. However, some of them, by the age of 14 years, people start showing some signs and symptoms, and we'll be going through the signs and symptoms. This is actually the reason whereby we normally say that a child has changed their behavior when they're in high school. So in the layman, we say, this was such a great child. They were so obedient. They were so this, but in high school, they've become, all these other negative things. So what you're failing to recognize is that this is actually the age of onset of most mental illnesses. And if you are here and you're asking why that age and not when you're younger, so we will be covering about adverse childhood experiences, which is something that I also really, really love to talk about. So when you're younger, when you're a child, every child has very high defense mechanisms. So you might be wondering why, if you go to the slums, the kids are happy, they are playing, even though they're in adverse poverty. Or a child seems to be kind of okay, even if they grew up in domestic violence situation, or even if a child is orphaned, they kind of can cope with life. They will go through school, they'll even get to high school. Yeah, it's because the defense mechanisms are very, very high at that point. Defense mechanisms are there to protect the brain from something, a negative situation that is so overwhelming, so much so, it could actually take over that individual. So defense mechanisms protect us. Even, things like denial, they're defense mechanisms. It's to protect us. But once a child becomes a teenager, then the defense mechanisms actually go down to pave way for the body to be able to develop physiologically, the breaking of voice, growing of beards, breast, hips, those things that happens to girls and boys. So once the defense mechanisms are down so that the body can be able to develop well the way it's supposed to develop, then now things start seeping in from the unconscious, which is what has been pushed back to the subconscious, to now you being aware, oh my God, this actually happened to me. I lived through this. Or the pain of not having one present parent, or the pain of what you endured while you were growing up. And we look more into that. Yeah. So those are some of the key facts to be able to know. Onset at the age of 14. When we are also looking at, there is a big correlation between high intelligence, very high intelligence, and development of mental illnesses. So even when you look at the profiles, you can see there. But if you look at our own Kenyan setting, which I think might make more sense, we have Rachel Shebesh, who I did an interview with. Actually, it's on our YouTube page, Living with Bipolar. And that goes to show you as well, factually, that having a mental illness does not prevent you from still being able to be a better version of yourself, or to accomplish anything that you would want to be or to do in your life. The difference comes in early treatment. So if things are caught on early enough and proper treatment is done, for some cases, it does necessitate medication. We will look into that. But some cases, therapy alone to be able to cope and doing your own self-work is enough to ensure that people are well. All right. So basically, mental disorders are just illnesses or conditions that affect how you think, how your mood is, and how your behavior is. Okay. And this actually really brings us to the point in which that something that is said a lot, maybe we don't pay a lot of attention to it, that if you want to change anything, you change your thoughts first. Okay. So the acronym is TAB. Thoughts, actions, behavior. So if you wake up in the morning, you're full of negative thoughts, then your actions are likely to be in line with that negative thought. And an action today, an action tomorrow, then now you're forming a new behavior. The same way people get into, for example, sex. Yeah, it's a thought that crosses your mind. Maybe you watch something, maybe you had a discussion about it, then you have that curiosity, then you follow suit in regards to an action. Then before you realize it, it becomes a prevailing behavior. Or even how people get into drug addiction or any other unhealthy behavior. So to change those patterns has to begin with your thought processes. Then that is going to follow suit to your actions and to your behavior, because thoughts really affect how we feel about ourselves, and we act in line with how we feel about ourselves, unless we are intentional about the process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Okay. So you want to be able to be in a space of self-awareness where you can identify maybe what are my toxic traits, or what are those things that I want to change about myself, have the positive thoughts, and then formulate how am I going to unlearn this behavior. And you can't just unlearn full stop. You have to replace it with a positive behavior. And if you do that often enough, then it becomes something new. Same to mental disorders as well. So the most common types of mental disorders are what you can see there. And if let me just give you a brief. Let me give you this analogy. Mental illnesses are a chemical imbalance. It's not just a behavior. And I say this with great emphasis. Nobody wakes up and decides, today I just want to be dysfunctional. As in Leo, I just don't want to cope. I want to be unruly. Nobody wakes up and does those things. So if somebody is sick with a mental illness, they have a chemical imbalance in the brain. Yeah. So think about yourself. There are days that you wake up and you feel You don't want to get out of bed. Maybe you slept late. Maybe you're going through a certain situation. Some premium tiers or character development could be happening. You just don't feel like getting out of bed. Okay. But by the time you get out of bed, go take a shower and go to class, or by the time you get out of bed, go take a shower and go meet your friends, you'll find that you've been able to feel a little bit better by the end of the day. Yeah. And then there are days that you wake up and you feel really, truly the best version of yourself. And everybody can be able to tell how you dress. You're high-fiving everybody, you're greeting everybody, you have a smile on your face, you have a glow. But so that process is enabled by a little thermostat that is in the brain. If the brain, if the days that you're feeling low, it means you have a low production of dopamine. And then the thermostat notices that, or rather the brain notices that, and then prompts the thermostat to release more dopamine. That's why you're not going to feel low like until the end of the day or for 3-4 days. Okay. There'll be moments where that changes. Or even the days that you feel really, really good about yourself, the brain will still sense that, prompt the thermostat and reduce the production. Otherwise, if you continue with that feeling, you'll be doing cartwheels, by the time it's evening, because you're just so happy and there is more dopamine being produced. But somebody with a mental illness, they have a flaw. Let me say a flaw. The thermostat is actually not working as it should. So normalcy is being able to have ups and downs, and that being able to resolve on its own. That's why in the definition of mental health, we said coping with daily life stresses. So if somebody has depression, it means there's a serious underproduction of dopamine. Serious underproduction. That person is not going to shower. They don't want to get out of bed. Picking even a phone call, responding to messages is so hard. They are withdrawn. They don't want to see anybody. They're not eating well. Maybe for some people, they might overeat, as in to try and cope with that. But they don't even have the sense of hope, because dopamine is actually responsible for like a new outlook of life. Dopamine is actually responsible for motivation, for feeling good. All the good things about your life is dopamine. It is also why we say that you cannot tell somebody with depression, snap out of it. Yeah, literally, you're trying to tell them to add some chemicals in their brains, which is virtually impossible because they have an illness. Okay. For bipolar, which is a common one, it's a shift in moods between highs and lows. We call them depression and manic states. Somebody with bipolar will have a symptom that is called grandiosity. Yeah. So they feel way more bigger, way more powerful or influential than they actually are. But mostly it's when they have lows, it's a complete low. And this low is like for a period of more than 2 weeks continuously. And when they're in the manic state, they have really, really highs. And this is for a period continuously, a period of 7 days. So it's not just being happy now. A lot of people abuse this a lot. It's not just being happy one moment. No, continuously. This person is not sleeping as well because they are really hyper. On that end, having anxiety is characterized by unnecessary worry, panic, sweating, increased heart palpitations, and high blood pressure. Okay, so that's what anxiety, excessive, and I'm talking about excessive worry and an excess fear that something is going to happen, an impending thing that is going to happen that is not necessarily actual, overthinking. Schizophrenia is one of the most common mental illnesses, and I dare say the easiest to treat, but the most stigmatized. When you think about schizophrenia, we are thinking about the person who is picking papers on the streets. This kind of chemical imbalance causes individuals to hallucinate, which means to see things that aren't there, hear things that aren't there, even smells or taste things, or even scratch themselves. They feel like things are walking. It's also characterized by delusions, where you have a belief system that is against reality. If you've ever had somebody say that the government is out to get our data or the TV is recording them, they probably have schizophrenia. And then we have alcohol use disorder. And this is an actual mental illness classified in the diagnostic statistical manual. And this is because alcohol completely rewires your brain system. I wish we could have another whole conversation separately about drugs and substance use, because once the brain is rewired, it means you cannot be able to provide your own dopamine the way I had explained earlier, unless you are under the influence. So you're constantly chasing a high. And in that sense, that's why we say it's a disease. It's no longer voluntary. It could have started voluntary. It could have started as a lifestyle, but then it gets to a point that you get, it becomes, a serious illness. Then we have personality disorders. There is a significant difference between having a personality disorder. Actually, only 1% of the population, you can Google that, are going to have personality disorders. However, a lot more people have symptomatic in terms of personality disorder. So you've heard a lot about saying that person has narcissistic traits. This person is OCD, or this person is antisocial. So we are just talking symptomatically, they have some traits that make them narcissistic, or any of those other personality disorders, but not necessarily having a personality disorder itself. They have to meet a criteria for us to say that. Then we have the normal eating disorders, binge eating. There's also anorexia. There's also bulimia. So you'll find that there are some people who have a complete distorted perception of the self. So you're completely skinny and bony, but when you look at yourself, you have that full body dysmorphia. And because of that, you'll find that every time they eat, they try to purge, or anyway, the other excess of it. PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, very, very common. Contrary to popular belief, it's not just experienced by soldiers, but we are likely to experience PTSD. And we look at trauma in 3 ways, all right? One, if you directly observe. So let's say you grow up in a family where you're observing domestic violence, you're actually likely to get more anxiety, because as your parents are fighting, the child begins to have anxiety, fear. Their heart is racing, okay? Their blood pressure is high. So later on in life, then they are likely to develop those very symptoms for any perceived threat, even if it's not happening to them. So you will get PTSD, or trauma is assessed when you observe it, when it directly happens to you, or if you hear of a loved one. Anything that has happened, if you just hear something really horrible even happened to, let's say, your parent, even if they are miles away, it's likely to take you right into shock. Okay, so trauma is in those 3 ways. I want us to move from the thought that we imagine it's only when it happens to an individual. And a good example for me was when we used to wake up every day and find 500 people have died in Italy, and all the newspapers, and everybody was reporting about death, right, left, and center, right? So that also formed a certain level of fear and anxiety for a lot of individuals. So trauma can also be passed that way. So what really causes mental illness? Yeah, is a big question. One, if you have a family history, and a family history, I'm talking about your folks, your parents, I'm talking about their siblings, and I'm talking about their parents' parents, so your grandparents and even your grandparents' siblings. So family history goes back that far along, not just saying you and your siblings and your parents are okay. But while I'm on this point, I want you to note that you do not inherit a mental illness. Let me repeat that again. You do not inherit a mental illness. You inherit a genetical predisposition. So you can be born in a family of, let me use alcoholism, because I think most of us have, that one random person. anyway that you know of. So you can be in a family where there's alcoholism, but your lifestyle is what is going to determine if you're going to trigger that gene or wake up that gene. Okay. And a good example, just allow me to repeat again, is also looking at the case of Rachel Shebesh. You'll find that her children do not have mental illnesses, even though she has, and she's a birth mother and carried them and has had it for over 30 years. So you don't inherit a mental illness, you trigger it by lifestyle. For example, you could have a family history of schizophrenia, but if you never smoke weed, you're not going to trigger that gene, because weed and psychosis are brother and sister for sure, eventually at some point in your life. Yeah? So the difference is basically how your body is wired. Some people are more sensitive to drugs than other individuals, which begs the debate of, hearing things here and there that this should be legalized. But as a mental health practitioner, it would be an absolute big mistake. So life experiences, if you have any history of abuse or trauma, if you've been in extreme circumstances and disasters, and we as Kenyans, we never even imagined, including myself, like I used to think those tsunamis and stuff like that, white people problems. But yeah, I think COVID came to just teach us things a little bit different, that we are all human beings and we are all vulnerable to disaster and circumstances. So chemical imbalance, there are those individuals who outrightly from birth, they are born with an imbalance. And these are children who get Down syndrome, CP, autism, ADHD. So you're born with the chemical imbalance in the first place. Of course, drugs and alcohol can trigger mental illnesses. And there's a big debate. Every time we are seeing a patient, we always try to determine, is it the alcohol and the drugs that made this person get into the depression, or did they have an underlying mental illness and then now tried to cope with these drugs and somehow it just became a disaster in the process? Yeah, so recreational drugs for sure. And for individuals who have serious medical conditions, any condition that is terminal, it's very heavy. It's very heavy on that individual. So they are also likely to get, for example, depression. And then for individuals who are more isolated, they are more likely than other individuals to have a mental illness as well. So let's look at toxic stress and early childhood. I don't know if there is anybody who has a question so far, or we'll do the questions after. What are your thoughts on this? I think I've talked too much. Who can tell us about toxic stress and early childhood? Maybe Eddie volunteer. Is there a relationship? Digala, can I start with you? Umenyamaza sana. I don't know if I'm still there.
Yes. We are with you and we are following. I'm actually learning a lot. Maybe just to say something about early childhood mental health. I think the stressors for children could be a bit different from adults and teenagers and so on. So maybe they may be insignificant from the way we see it. So that's why I'm actually particularly looking forward to this part, to learn what are the stressors for kids and how do they change them? How does it change them as adults? What kind of adults does it make them? And how can we raise kids who are well taken care of in terms of mental health?
All right. Thank you for that. I was also just looking at the chat. Very good, conversations and questions going on in there. Absolutely. Toxic stress really does interfere with the developmental, physical, and emotional development of children. So we are going to look at first of all, what causes, and then I'll take you through the adverse childhood experiences. So basically, for a lot of kids, any form of abuse, which is physical, sexual, or emotional, and remember I said trauma is observed, happens to you, or you hear of a loved one. So you might not see maybe your mom being abused, but you heard the screams. Yeah, you probably saw her being kicked out of the house. So that is traumatic in itself. Emotional abuse comes in when persistently a child is insulted, over criticized, because the voice of a parent is it's very very superior. So the things that we tell our children become their inner voice, and they keep repeating those things to themselves, even though we think they're okay with it. And sexual abuse comes in form of early exposure to pornography, being touched, or just the actual act itself. Okay, neglect of parents, physical and emotional. And this is a very key one, because you find that you could have the presence, physical presence of a parent in the house, but they're not attending to the child, especially in this digital era. So it's not about just a parent as in kukua kwa nyumba ama kulala kwa hiyo nyumba, for lack of better word, but what is it that they are doing with that child? So neglect can still happen with kids, even though the parents are there physically. And I think probably not a lot of people know that. So that brings in the formation of poor attachment styles. That's another whole conversation. But it could also be emotional neglect, not just being able to be there, emotionally available for the child when they cry, when they want to be loved, when they want to hear words of affirmation. Emotional neglect is also very important. And then obviously if there's any dysfunctionality within the family. So mostly for if children grow up in adverse poverty, that does affect them. I think if you hear a lot of stories, I like to refer to Tuko, because every time I go and watch Tuko, I become a bit traumatized, a little bit. But if you hear people actually giving out their stories, it always starts to, like, life was so hard. We could not put food on the table. We had to start working when we are young. Sometimes would skip meals. So poverty is an actual cause, okay, for as a stressor for children. Childcare, of course, living in a neighborhood that is unsafe, that exposes children also, like, let's say, things like sexual abuse, and of course exposure to domestic violence. And I want to say this because I've had people for such a long time, and I've had sessions with women, men, parents for a very long time, and you keep hearing over and over and over, I stayed because of the children. But if you think that you staying is protecting the children, but if you weigh between protecting that child's environment of what safety is like, if you weigh in terms of how do you build this child's sense of security, please mute, sense of belonging, if you weigh what is it that what is going to be better off for this child in the long run, like 20 years from today, then you will realize that staying is actually not the best idea. Yeah, however, as a professional, I can say that it's a bit more complicated between whether somebody is going to stay or not stay, unless you're really in that situation. As an outsider, it's easier to say, just go. But also leaving is another whole complicated issue in itself. So protecting children is very, very important. I will send a link to Joan, and it's something that you're going to learn about adverse childhood experiences. It's a short certificate course that is online that teaches you an early introduction into trauma and adverse childhood experience, and you actually do it and you get the certificate online. I'm going to do that for you guys. So adverse childhood experiences are anything that happens to children between the formative years, usually between the ages of 0 to around 10 years. And I'm saying 0 because you will find that there are some women who really experience stressors when they are pregnant. And those, when they experience severe stressors when they are pregnant, that also affects the baby. Because remember, when the child is inside you, they can feel when you're angry, they can feel when you're anxious, they can feel when you're fearful. Obviously, if there's any form of physical altercation, then they can be able to kind of feel the impact of that. And if you look at these infographics here, it's actually, sometimes I look at it and I feel like this is so scary, but the truth is 67% of the population have at least one adverse childhood experiences, even the 80 of us here. Yeah, if you go through, there are like 8 of them. If you go through them and do that assessment for yourself, you'll find that you have one. But self-awareness means that you know and you start working on it and striving for progress, not for perfection. Nothing is perfect. Just strive for progress. Today I'm better than I was yesterday. That's enough. Okay, so today I'm working on this, which I did not work on yesterday, and that's enough. Okay, so I'm looking at abuse, neglect, household. So you can see that. I hope you can see. I don't want to go through all these ACEs also because of time. Let me see what time it is. Oh, wow, it's already 9. Yeah. So poor mental health due to physical health is also, something that we need to note. There is obviously a very strong association between ACEs and physical health. But what I want you to note is that children who experience ACEs are more likely to develop obesity, poor overall health, and respiratory problems. So these are physical issues that sometimes we don't relate to an ACE. So it's not just emotional and psychological, but also affects the child physically. And why we are also emphasizing that there is no health without mental health. Yeah. So physical health, mental health are all one. That is what makes up what health is. So for us to say that somebody actually has a mental illness and not just a behavioral issue, it has to meet these criteria. Number 1, the behavior that you see must cause significant distress to either that individual or to the people that are who are around. Significant distress. Okay, so if you just complain today, or if you experience distress just one time, it does not make it significantly to say that that's an illness. Okay, when you talk about deviance, we are just saying that your behavior is different from how that person usually is. I think you can meet somebody or you can look at somebody's behavior and just feel like this person has completely significantly changed, either in how they think, how they're talking about their emotions, or even just general behaviors and actions. Okay, so that's what deviance is. And then if the behavior is in a manner to warrant alarm in regards to harm to self or to other people, it's a danger to other people or to self, then we can say this person actually has a mental illness. Okay, if the behavior is causing, and I like to say, clinical significant distress going there. So the dysfunctionality is not just in one area. If you go to school, there are complaints. If it's at home, there are complaints. If it's your partners, there are complaints. If it's your friends, there are complaints. Work, they have letters that have been written. So and personal levels. So the dysfunction is not just in one area. This dysfunction can be seen in different areas. When we talk about cultural appropriateness, we are talking about, for example, there are those unwritten norms, for example, just dressing. So if you go and find somebody has just stripped, then that is to alert you that, okay, there's something really wrong with this individual. I think we had a case of a lawyer who stripped in town. So it must meet this criteria. The symptoms must be able to meet this criteria, all of it. Okay, but it's important to know that symptoms are also progressive. They just don't all happen at once. So basically, what are the signs and symptoms? Before I even go to what is written in this chart, if you're writing, I want you to note there are 5 clinical red flags. that are also able to help us identify how we are doing. You know, when you're looking at your own self status, how are you doing? You're doing that general check on you. Number one is sleep patterns. First of all, identify what is your norm. Some people do well with 7 hours or 6 hours. Others do well with 9 hours. Okay. The recommendation is around 8 hours. So sleep is very, very important. So if there is a disruption in that you're not sleeping enough, maybe you go to bed and stay awake for a long time before you sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night and don't go back to sleep, or you're struggling to get out of bed. Sleep patterns, very important. 2, eating patterns. What is your normal eating pattern? And then, are you deviating from that eating pattern? Yeah, you're not eating, or you're eating too much. So from today, if you come across somebody saying, you know, I didn't have dinner and I'm not even feeling hungry now, so I've not had breakfast, I've not had lunch, there's something wrong. Yeah, the brain is supposed to send the message for you to eat, because the brain actually needs that nourishment, and it gets the nourishment from food. So it's not a badge of honor to say, do you have not eaten yesterday and today? No, no, no. It's not a badge of honor. It's a problem. Thirdly is mood. Yeah, and the mood is the best and the easiest, yeah, to tell. I like to give an example of if you're here and you're dating or married, or you know, in that kind of situationship, you can be able to look at your partner, and just by looking at them, you're able to immediately read their mood and determine, am I going to discuss about this story or not? Yeah. Or if you have a boss, you can enter your boss's office and you wanted to ask for permission, and then you read their mood, and then you say, hey, I was just coming to say hi. Yeah. So mood is very easy to identify, not just in other people, but also in ourselves. So if you find yourself, you're a bit irritable, more teary than usual, low, or even extreme, happy, laughing awkwardly, I mean, it's a problem. There's a problem. All right. And then the 2 last ones, which we don't really think are concerns. One is bowel movements. And I'm talking about your ability to be able to go for long calls, stool, or short calls, urine. So ideally, you should have long calls every day, but you'll find that sometimes people have not, even a whole week, somebody has not gone for a long call, or all of a sudden you're having loose stool, diarrhea, and it's not associated to anything you ate. Or you find that you can't pee satisfactorily. So it's like small amounts of peas that are very concentrated. And lastly, because we are all adults here, I hope, is libido. And libido is not the sexual act, rather than the urge. So the urge should be there because it's normal. But if you find that that has completely disappeared, or it's non-existent for those who are married, then that also tells you that there's something that is weighing on your brain and it's overwhelming you. Those are the 5 clinical red flags to be able to help you identify that this is a psychological issue and not a physical issue. All right. Other than that, the general signs and symptoms are feeling sad, you're not able to concentrate, or even loss of memory. You have excess fear, worry, there's guilt, you have isolated yourself from individuals. By the time you're getting to being detached from reality, that's another level of escalation. You're not able to cope with stress. Remember, we said that mental health is your ability to cope with daily life stressors. And that there tells us that daily life stressors is part and parcel of our lives. In fact, don't ever imagine that you will not experience stressors. Those are part and parcel of our lives, but being able to cope with them is what normalcy or good mental health is. If you drink, or if your friend drinks, how are their patterns? Are they increasing? Are they becoming more dependent? And then also, if you're experiencing any trouble, you find that it's just you're always the person sana na kila mtu. You are the person who every other person is always a problem. You know, sometimes it's us, you know, with the toxic trait, but we are unaware. So it's important for us to also be able to call ourselves for those traits that we might have. So if you have trouble relating with people, then that could also be a concern. Remember, I said it's not just one of these, and every mental illness has a criteria. Yeah. For example, for bipolar, you must have experienced that for 2 months. For anxiety, 1 month. Those symptoms I talked about. For depression, 2 weeks. For schizophrenia, 6 months. Yeah. So it's not just because you had like somebody's calling you today and you turned and they were not there. I'm not trying to say that you have schizophrenia. No. That's actually normal. Yeah. Healthy relationships. What are healthy relationships? I'm about to conclude. Just 2 more things. But allow me to ask, I don't know, Wycliffe, BK, Manjiro, Kamau, Sophie, what do you imagine a healthy relationship is or looks like? Any one of you?
I'd say communication, one that has clear communication.
Yeah, clear communication. Yeah, I like that. Another person? Thank you for that.
Understanding.
Yeah, understanding. Thank you. Fantastic. One more, last person.
I'd say one which you don't have to doubt yourself for anytime.
One where you don't have to doubt yourself, walk on eggshells, one that does not have to hinder you from being yourself because you're wondering about how that other person is going to take it. Fantastic. I see you guys are in the right track. Okay. So basically, a healthy relationship should look like this. And remember, behavior is a formation of many different actions. That is what forms a behavior. The reason why we say that person is polite and that one is a bully, it's because we have seen things over and over. And I'm saying this because every time we spot bad behavior, especially if we're in relationships, I'm a woman, so I don't really know how men operate. Maybe one man can tell us. But for women, when you fall in love and you like jumped into that deep end, even when you see a red flag, you will be like, even Jesus was tempted. Yeah, so you try to rationalize the behavior. We're told to forgive each other. So just remember that behavior is as a result of several actions. And if things are repeated over and over again, then chances are it's a character defect. And you cannot fix a character defect in somebody. You cannot fix that, by the way, unless they call themselves for a meeting and decide, I'm going to change this about myself. There is no amount of texting paragraphs. There's no amount of insults. There's no amount, well, I'm a really huge believer. So I believe prayer can change. But while they are changing, you can also be away from the relationship as they are changing. Yeah. Whether it's an intimate relationship or even a friendship. So respect and mutual respect is very important. A healthy relationship should also have non-threatening behavior. You should not be fearful when you're in a healthy relationship, even amongst friends. If you are afraid of sharing something, let's say you got a new job and you got this amazing salary, but you feel like you cannot be able to share that with friends because what will they say? Now they'll think you have changed. Then you need to reevaluate. Yeah, those kind of friendship. Good healthy relationships must be based on trust and support, and remember, trust is earned. Yeah, I think a lot of us as human beings, we like to look for the good in people, and that's okay, but we also need to start learning from what people show us and accepting that if somebody shows you who they are, that you also need to believe who they are. So trust and support, unconditional support, not when it's to their benefit. That's when people show up. Honesty is key. And maybe another time you can look into value clarification. Okay, so honesty is very important for those who are here, who are parents. So responsible parenting is actually one of the ways to be able to build healthy relationship with your children. And this is behaviorally, not what you say, what you do. Healthy relationships also bring in shared responsibility. So it's not just one person who has to be doing the calling, who has to be doing the follow-up, who has to be doing the planning, who has to be doing the ideas. No, it has to be shared responsibility. Whether, of course, to the level at which you can, especially financially, okay? And that also brings us to the partnership. And I'll look a little bit more into that. And being fair. Fairness is actually very important. So when we're also looking at healthy relationship, for people who are married, physical intimacy is actually, I think, by the time people are living in one home as brother and sister, then it's a big problem. Something is really not going on well. Somebody talked about communication as well. So in conflict resolution, being able to address conflicts without judgment, without contrasting the other person. And one of the ways to be able to do this is to employ empathy. Yeah. So if Liz is saying that the way you behave, like you hurt me, you don't, before you even jump to try and explain yourself, is to try and put yourself in Liz's shoes from her perspective. Why does this, how did this hurt her? What is it that made her get hurt? Okay, and then understanding that, then now going to your explanation. You know, like the way sometimes you can tell somebody something, it's supposed to be a joke, then it's a bad joke, and they end up getting hurt. So when they come and tell you, your job is not to jump into being defensive about, oh no, I didn't mean that, this is what I meant. No, is to try and see, I can see how that would have sounded. I can see how that would have hurt you. Yeah. And I'm sorry that I made you feel that way. Then now you can go to your explanation. Empathy is very, very important. Also, in a healthy relationship, you have a sense of yourself as a separate person. So a lot of times you'll find that in relationships, whether it's in friendships or intimate relationships, once people form these friendships, they become like completely enmeshed. You forget every other person who existed. Okay, you should always have that feeling, that your own autonomy, that you can have other friends, other connections, and not threatening this relationship. Okay, I hope you get that. And also a healthy relationship is one that fosters curiosity. Yeah, and this means that just having positive mindsets that are a bit more flexible, because curiosity is what prompts us to learn, to listen to each other in awe, to appreciate others, perspective, like how did they get to where they are. It's always also important to note that be with people who are aligned to your values. At the end of the day, have 5 values that you live by. And in those 5 values, have non-negotiables and negotiables. Have non-negotiables and negotiables, because nobody is perfect. So you're not going to have 5 values that define your way of life, and then all of them are non-negotiables, but just see, okay, for this one I can negotiate. Maybe if they are white and I'm black, yeah, I can negotiate that. But if it's honesty, no. Or if they're unkind, no, that one I cannot negotiate. Have those things that you can negotiate and those things that you can't negotiate, and be in line with that. So red flags, you're looking at red flags in relationships, parental relationships, which are very significant to us, no matter what we would like to think about. But so if you have controlling parents, and I'm talking about this because if we don't deal with those traumas, then we pass them, or we outlive those traumas in the new relationships that we build later in life. Okay, so if you grew up that way, then you're also likely to be like that. And these are some of the important things to be able to note about your partners or even your friends, that you, basically anybody you're trying to build a relationship with. If there are boundaries that have been put in place and somebody keeps, not by mistake, but you have communicated and they're disrespecting those boundaries, that's a red flag. Okay, if somebody never has time for you, if they don't treat you as an equal, they treat you as somebody below them, if they're constantly, jokes but criticizing you all the time, if you feel that you're kind of not heard, or somebody is listening but they're not hearing you, yeah, that's also a red flag. If you're so afraid to express yourself, to be your authentic self, okay, if you're uncomfortable about that person, if an individual shuts you down when you try to communicate, or if you're trying to resolve a conflict, those are narcissistic tendencies. And obviously finances is a very, very big one. So how do we cope? How do we cope? I don't know. How have you guys been coping? Huh? Brian and Rael and who else? And SLC and Felicia. How have you guys been coping with all these things that we have talked about? Anybody? Felicia, you there? Chamutai? Joshua? Come on, guys. Bosibori? Chege?
Pardon.
Speaking out. Thank you. Felicia has said speaking out. Joanne is saying we cry the whole night. Yeah, yeah, very powerful. Another person?
Walking away.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to engage in every situation. I think we must be able to identify what you need to address and what you need to walk away from. Binge eating. Yeah. By the way, if you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night for a snack, yeah, that's coping. Communication as well. Just live and pray for them. Aki, sometimes, yeah. Okay. Keeping off stressors, avoiding. Right. Perfect. Thank you, guys. So basically, coping strategies are, yeah, we've talked about this, so I'll just do a run through. Communication, all right. Ensure that you're able to communicate very well, and taking more time to listen to each other. And in communication, I would like to emphasize still on empathy and trying to understand where that person is coming from, rather than being ready to listen to respond, listening to understand. Okay, so for intimate relationships, intimacy is very important. And let me just say this, that intimacy is not just sexual. There's emotional intimacy, and emotional intimacy is actually such a big thing. So being able to connect with one person, after all, I know a lot of people who practice emotional intimacy and decide to wait until they get married and still get that level of satisfaction, some. So that's one way to cope. Issues of money are always going to be there. And before even engaging in intimate relationships, be able to observe, how does your person there, how does he spend money? What's his relationship with money? Does he tithe or not? If that's your belief system. Does he save? So is he thinking about a certain future? Does he invest in himself or herself, whether it's education, whether it's their surrounding where they live, whether it's being able to go home and shop for your parents? Are they being able to do those things? Talk about, if we are going to get married, how are we going to be sharing the bills? What will you be paying for and what will you not be paying for? What is your expectation? in regards to running a home, in regards to both of us working and bringing money to the table. These are serious conversations that need to be had before serious intimate relationships are formed, so that you're able to cope. Actually, by the way, let me shock you. The number one stressor that results to family breakups is financial, then infidelity. Not infidelity, then financial. Imagine, like, money is such a problem. It is such a problem, especially in relationships. Coping as well, being able to define roles and responsibilities, and being able to see, are you able to complement each other? Are you able to identify your partner's strengths and weaknesses, and how that can complement, and then also allowing for independence. So just that person has been their own person for the past 30 years or for the past 20 years. Now that they have gotten into this relationship and into a marriage, does not mean that they have lost who they are. So allowing your person to be their own person is also quite important. Okay. When you look at also issues, just make time. For each other. And also in that sense, I can add, in terms of coping with issues, is also learning each other's love languages. And it's such a big thing. You might think that, for example, buying your girlfriend gifts is what is communicating to her that you love her, but maybe her love language is quality time. So it doesn't matter how many gifts you buy her. If you're not there to spend quality time, just scrolling and talking about the stars and everything and nothing, then they will still feel a void. Okay. If your man's language is maybe affirmation or acts of service, like, it doesn't matter how much you do other things. If you don't do those acts of service, they will still feel not heard, not felt. And children also have love languages, but with kids, you learn their love languages as they grow. So when they are younger, you kind of practice all the 5 love languages, to them. Coping with issues is also ensuring that you are respectful. There are rules to fighting. By the way, you guys, make rules for fighting. For example, we are going to fight about this issue, but one, we will not say words that are derogatory to each other. We are not going to use parents as a point of reference. We are not going to, obviously, physical abuse, or just have rules. Like, no matter how bad a situation is, these are the no-go zones. Have those rules. And if somebody truly just loves you and respects you, then they are going, or we are not going to use each other's issues against each other. Have those rules put in place. That is what respect is, being able to honor that. And that will really help you cope with a lot of issues that are going to come. So for conflict, definitely apologize. Apologize, by the way. It's not as hard, even though it's harder for some people, but learn how to be apologetic, be gentle with correcting each other, and then don't always make yourself the victim. And when you use empathy, then you're able to see where the other person is coming from. Being sensitive. Also, when you're trying to cope with issues, trust is very, very important. So for example, if you come to the house and you spend so much time on your phone, either on phone calls or even chatting, and that is making your partner, he or she, uncomfortable, and you know that, even if you're not doing anything wrong, then I think respecting or gaining trust in that relationship means that you're going to stop that behavior, so that you stop growing this level of suspicion to your partner. So it doesn't mean that you're doing something, and sometimes trying to explain, no, I'm not doing anything, doesn't help. But just knowing that changing this behavior is going to have more peace within this setup, then that's enough. Okay. Obviously, trust is also built on honesty. Trust is also built on communication, being able to communicate. Where are you? Are you running late? You know, whatever it is. And avoiding just being over jealous or even overreacting. Remember, some of these things come from our own childhood upbringing. Okay, this is the last thing for sure. Self-care is key. Of all the coping, the mother of coping is self-care. And contrary to, I will not ask you this question, but contrary to what we think, self-care is not one thing. So if you go and do your hair today or your nails today or go to the barber today or go watch some game with the boys, no, that's not enough. Yeah, self-care is an intentional process. Yeah, it's an intentional process of ensuring that you are attending to yourself. And there are 5 areas of self-care. And if you're not practicing those 5 areas of self-care, it means you're not filling up your wellness, yeah, toolbox. So self-care is your fuel. Whatever the road ahead or the path you've taken, self-care is what keeps your motor running and your wheels turning. I want you guys to remember that. Okay, and those are the benefits of self-care. I want us to look at this. So professionally, what is it that you're doing to ensure that you are gaining, for example, a skill? Remember, we said a better version of yourself. So if that's the same way you were yesterday with Form 4 or Class 8, then you're not bettering yourself. You're not putting yourself first. You matter. Put yourself first. Take care of yourself. So professionally, what are you being able to do? If you're working, are you able to have that balance, that work-life balance? Are you able to set boundaries? Are you able to learn something new that is going to, make you better? If this job ends today, at least you'd have had that work experience plus more because you took your time to do other things. For physical, exercise is at the top of the list, yeah, of all the coping strategies. And even self-care, physical exercise is at the top of the list. It is the only natural way to ensure that your brain performs optimally. If you have a pre-existing trauma, exercise. If you're anxious, exercise. If you can't sleep, exercise. If you have a diagnosis, exercise. If you don't have a diagnosis, exercise. If you don't have confidence, exercise. If you're doubting yourself, exercise. I cannot emphasize more on exercise. Yeah, if you go to our conversation this morning on Chiromo, we're talking about adulting 101, adulting and mental health, and this also came out. So for physical, are you getting regular sleep? Physical, are you enjoying physical intimacy? Are you eating well? That is also on physical. And exercise as well. Psychological, are you in a robotic state, like wake up, go to work, sleep, wake up, brush your teeth, go to work, sleep, or do you take your time? Yeah, even as Christians, do you have that quiet time for yourself? Do you meditate? And we'll see that also in the spiritual kind of self-care. So take time to self-reflect, go for therapy. As in, I still go for therapy. It's very, very important. It's the only safe space for you to be your authentic self. Okay. Keep a journal, be creative. Yeah. Join a support group if you can, that is healthy. Emotionally, be able to do the things that one of you also said here. Okay. The self-love, crying, laughing. And by the way, I don't know what you guys think love is. And I will not ask you that question, Lucky, but love is a doing word. It's not a feeling, when you say I love you. It's the actions in which we do things that determine whether we love or not love. And even in my therapeutic space, I use a definition of love biblically, how it is. That love is kind, love is patient, and and all those things. So ask yourself, yeah, as Liech, are you kind? Are you being kind to yourself? Are you patient with yourself? Yeah. How do you treat yourself? What are the words that you tell yourself? So that's what self-love is, being able to do those things to yourself. Don't call yourself names. Don't say, I'm so stupid, I'm such an idiot. How could I have not known? That's not loving yourself. If you fail, be patient with yourself. Learn from your lesson. Yeah, be patient with your progress. Be patient with your journey. We are not all the same. So be patient. Practice self-love. All right. Spiritual, the model that we use today is biopsychosocial and spiritual. So if you're tackling a problem with a client, you're trying to approach it from a biological, a psychological, a social, or a spiritual perspective. It is actually part and parcel. And remember, the belief in a higher power, the belief in God is what harnesses hope. We have no guarantee if you're going to be tomorrow, but you'll write on your diary that this is what I'm going to do tomorrow. You'll make plans, right? It's because that spiritual part of you is still alive. Yeah, so there is hope that comes from spirituality. Meditation also comes here, being mindful, and mindful means being present in the moment. So you're not tied by worries of yesterday, or frustrations of yesterday and worries about tomorrow. You're just trying to be present and grateful for where you are, what you have, and just letting go of things that you cannot control, because you cannot control the past or the future, just the present. All right. Personal, what are you doing? What are your goals? What are your plans? Yeah. Are you spending time with your family? Are you taking time to harness your brain by reading, something? So the self-care wheel is very, very important. So if you exercised, you've put a coin in your wellness toolbox. Yeah. If you practice psychological self-care, you've added a coin. If you practice emotional self-care, you've added a coin. If you practice spiritual, you've added another coin. Personal, a coin. Then your wellness toolbox is doing well. Okay. If you don't do exercise, you subtract a coin. So how is your wellness toolbox doing is the last thing that I'm going to say for this very long conversation, but I hope it was very helpful. So thank you so much for listening in. I know some people have dropped off, but I hope that one of two people have taken a lesson here and there. And thank you for the opportunity as well to have this conversation with you. These are our partners. If you have any of these insurance covers, just go for therapy. It doesn't have to be Gathoni, just go for therapy. You can just walk in, show your card. If you're still a student, NHIF is going to cover for you. Yeah. So let's go out there and take care of ourselves. We also have a toll-free number. 0800 to 20 free, toll free, on 24/7. So don't be distressed alone. Make that phone call, share that number, and get help. Thank you. I hand it over to who?
To myself.
Lala?
Gathoni.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for the very, very informative session. I have learned a lot personally. There's so much I didn't know. We have a few questions that I don't know if you have some time to briefly take us through them. Yes, Gathoni?
Sorry.
We have a few questions that we got from the conversations in the chat box.
Yeah, I can see that.
Briefly, yeah. The first one was. Oh, okay. Yes, please go ahead.
I was going to say that I don't know which is the best way to address, because some of these are direct DMs and I might not be able to address them now that it's going to 10 o'clock. So, okay, it's okay. I found a solution. I'll DM them my number. Yes.
Okay.
Or let me write.
Yes, you can share with us your contacts.
Okay, yeah. Maybe you can be reading for me something.
Okay, so among the ones that were shared publicly, the first one was from Chepto, who asked, sometimes moods and eating habits are hormonal. How do you tell when it's a mental health problem?
Okay, yeah, good questions. It's true. So how to tell if it's a
question.
Sorry?
Mine wasn't a question.
Is that what has been read?
Yes, I've read a question from the chat box. Go right ahead, Gathoni.
Right. So usually hormonal problems will happen between either when you're negotiating adolescent, or also if you're negotiating like later ages, let's say mid 30s going onwards. And also hormonal problems are not persistent. Yeah, and hormonal problems are also treatable. So usually the best thing to do, maybe I forgot to mention, but the body is an alarm system. The body will always alert you if something wrong. Mental health problems just don't show up psychologically. It's the backache, it's the headache, Hapanakula syndrome, all those things that you're experiencing, but including, remember I talked about change in eating patterns, as well. So just make sure that if you experiencing physical symptoms, or if you have any symptoms that you feel this is not the normal me, go and get a checkup. When you get a checkup, then there are tests that are going to be done, and that can be able to identify if this is actually hormonal or if it's not. Okay. And even before you get that checkup, maybe it's to ask yourself, is there something that I'm going through that I'm trying to cope with? Because what food does, food actually triggers the release of dopamine. That's why we cope very well with food, because when you eat, you get nice dopamine released, and then you sleep so well. Yeah. That's what we use for children. We just keep overfeeding them so that they can sleep, because dopamine is released. So even as adults, we can cope in that sense as well. So get that checkup, or try and ask yourself, is there a particular issue that I'm trying to run away from? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. The other question, well, the next one was mine. I'll skip it and ask the others first. Maybe if we have some time, we'll go back to it. So Alice asked, what are practical ways that caregivers can protect their mental health? By caregivers, she means those who are caring for children with special needs or older parents.
Yeah, I love that question, because we do underestimate the burden of caregiving. We say that if you have a member who is sick in the family, you also become sick as a caregiver. And how do you become sick? You start getting anxious, you over worry about that person, you're not sleeping, you're not eating well. Then before you realize, you have now, adopted this whole thing. But when we're talking about coping, self-care is key. You must be able to identify yourself as an individual. You matter. I cannot emphasize that enough. You matter. You deserve peace, you deserve calmness, you deserve to even take time off without fear of guilt. Yeah. And I'm just saying that if you don't do that, then you're more likely to get overwhelmed. So even if you're going to just walk, go take a walk. If you're going to ask somebody to come in and just help you because you need a breather, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Self-care is key. And praying for sure. Yes. Mhm. So thank you. Thank you for all the great, wonderful messages. Wow, there are so many.
We have another question. Can you hear me, Gathoni?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Sorry, I'm just trying to read, but yes, I can hear.
Okay. The other question we have is from Felicia, and she's asking, how do you unlearn bad habits and replace them with better ones? And if you have any recommendations on reading materials, kindly share. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about reading materials. Is it recreational reading? Is it more educational? But I would say that there is more than enough information online. You can literally Google anything, including how to go to Mars. I'm just saying that on a light note, but there is a lot of information that you can find online. The trick is usually to figure out what works for you. For example, are you an audio person? So would you rather listen to a podcast? Or would you rather read physical book mpaka una draw lines? Yeah. Will you just reading a small article work better, or do you need like serious background where you want to see even references, where did they come up with that information, kind of thing? Or are you a YouTube person that you need to go and watch something? But you can literally just find any information, whether it's forming healthy habits, whether it's learning and unlearning, new behaviors. Practice all those and then figure out what is it that works for me. But basically, the process of learning and unlearning is based on intentionality. First, identifying what do I need to unlearn. Is it cursing? I remember I really used to curse a lot when I was in uni, but then somehow it disappeared when I got kids. I mean, I don't think I want my kids cursing. so I think you just be intentional about it, and always remember you're not perfect. Life is not perfect. So strive for progress. If you do one thing positive today, you might fall backwards tomorrow, but keep going, keep going. Yes. Somebody has also recommended very, very nice books here. Atomic Habits. That's actually a very good book. There's a nice book for women called Lean In, which is also, I think you can get the audio version of it on YouTube and download it. There's also another one called Ikigai. It's about just being centered. I also found that very good and interesting, and also learning, because I think as Christians sometimes you'll find that we don't consume everything just because it's there and just because it's information. So I would say being in line with your value system and your belief system is also very important, even as you continue reading. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Kevin, for that suggestion of those books. The recording will be shared. I just want to say, if you call me, especially during the day, maybe this week I'll pick because I'm on leave, but I'm not likely to pick calls because if I'm in a session, I don't pick calls. Yeah. So if you call me and I don't pick, please don't take it personally. Just drop me a text. Yeah. I'm going to respond to that text. All right.
All right. Thank you. I think it's 5 minutes to 10. We've really extended the session. Thank you everyone for your patience. Thank you so much, Gathoni, for sharing with us. We look forward to also, receiving the link to the online course that you're to share with Joanne.
Yeah, let me do that.
Yes. And Emanuela was asking if we have meetings on Mondays. Oh yeah, this is a conference that's running for this whole week, organized by FOC Ladies. So we invite you to join us every day at 8 p.m. For this week. And in the meantime, again, we want to pass our appreciation to you, Gathoni, on behalf of FOC and Rubies and all of us who are happy to learn from you. We look forward to learning some more, even on our engagements on social media. I hope everyone you've noted Gathoni's handle on social media. I've skimmed a little, and I think there's a lot of information there that can be very helpful to for us. Sorry, there was a last question that I think is very important. Maybe this is a suggestion by Gladys to us. I think this is for the Rubies leadership. Joanne, kindly note that maybe you organize a session to discuss challenges with firstborn daughters. You know, how to handle trauma and all of that. So that has been noted. We'll definitely plan for something for firstborn daughters. Yes, you know, the challenges that come with being a firstborn daughter in an African home. Is it the same link the entire week? Perus, maybe you could help answer this question. Will we be using the same link the whole week? Wycliffe, hi, kindly let us know if we'll be using the same link this whole week.
It shall be communicated in the course of the day tomorrow. So yeah, fret not.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'd like us to pray just before we call this a day, before we wrap this up. So Wiki, you're on my radar already. Kindly lead us in a prayer to close the session.
All right. Let us all believe and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, we are before your presence this wonderful evening. Thank you so much for the session that you've enabled us to have that has been extremely insightful. Thank you also for having brought Gathoni to us and having given her the wisdom to teach and to instruct us in these precious lessons. I pray that you may also guide us in how to apply the things that we have learned, that they may be of benefit to our lives. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night and see you tomorrow at our reproductive health session, ladies.